Thank you so much. Honestly, starting with Gilmore Girls is the best thing you could have done because I've binged that entire series 2 different times. And what's funny is they did an add-on to it, and her mom actually ended up going to therapy. So that's what's hysterical about that. But it's so good to be with you guys. My name is Nicole Golden, and I'm actually no stranger to Lakeland. I grew up in Lakeland and actually went to Lakeland Christian School back when it was like a shell of what it is now. Anyways, I was talking to Pauline Riddle, I can't even try to remember what it looked like before this, but I had Missy Green as my first grade teacher, and then Laura Edgar was Laura Coachman as my second grade teacher, and then we moved to upstate New York when I was 14, and so then I went to a public school up there. But I have a lot of fond memories of Lakeland, and I actually moved back down here after I graduated from college and taught here for 3 years. I taught 10th and 11th grade English and loved my time here. In fact, Megan Palm was one of my students, and I can't remember if there's no other students in here, I don't think right now, but I stalked them all on Instagram and had fun with them that way. So it's such an honor to be here. You all have index cards and pens on your tables because I'm going to cover a lot of information, and then at the end, I'm going to open it up for question and answer. Mental health is such a sensitive issue, though, so some of you may feel comfortable wanting to ask questions out loud, which you'll have time to. But then we'll also have Jen come and gather the index cards if you've written down questions anonymously, and I'll answer them anonymously, okay? So I want you to feel safe to ask whatever you want to ask. Excuse me. And nothing is off limits. I'm going to share a lot about myself with you this morning. And nothing is off limits. I feel like God gave me a story for a reason, and I'm willing to talk about all of it. And so I don't want you to feel like you can't ask something or ask me to elaborate on something. This is why Jesus allowed me to walk through this journey. And so I just want to let you know about that. I also want to let you know I have a very weird sense of humor, and so I will be laughing at myself throughout this. You are welcome to laugh at me too and with me. So I know it's a deep topic, it's a tense topic, but one of the best things I ever heard was, if we can't laugh at our trauma, then what are we doing? And so I'm giving you permission to laugh at my trauma. I'm going to laugh at my trauma. If you share some of your stories, we may laugh at your trauma. Let's just loosen up a little bit and just kind of enjoy being here so that we can kind of broach and talk about this subject together. So a little bit about me. I grew up, like I said, in Lakeland, and I actually refer to my Lakeland years as my safe years. I loved living in Lakeland. We went to Heritage Baptist Church back in the J.O. Purcell years. And I don't know if this is, I'm not sure how new some of you are to Lakeland, but that was a long time ago. It was great. And it was just we had a really safe home. I really enjoyed myself. I really felt free. What's crazy is I see Dr. Kevin Hull. He's been my therapist for 10 years now. And he was actually a high schooler when we lived in Lakeland, and my parents were youth leaders at Heritage. And he said he remembered one day we were all there, and I did cartwheels all the way down the front aisle of the church. I was just so free. He remembered thinking, she's such a free girl. Like she doesn't care that all these teenagers are just staring at her wondering what the heck she's doing. And so I loved Lakeland. And then when I was 14, my dad worked for a parachurch organization, and they moved us to their headquarters up in Scroon Lake, New York. And Scroon Lake is a town of 2,500 people. I went to a public school. We had 300 kids, K to 12. I was valedictorian, but that means nothing because there were 22 kids in my class, and most of them were high. So, I don't usually tell people that. I just usually say I was valedictorian and leave it there. But full disclosure, it wasn't really hard. And so I graduated valedictorian, but while we were living up there, I started realizing something. I started to put things together that the more I performed, the better I behaved, the more I got straight A's, the more I did exactly what was expected of me, the more I was praised, the more people wanted to talk to me and be around me, the more adults recognized me. And honestly, and this is no fault of their own, I have a very close relationship with my parents now, but the more they seemed to notice me and love me. And it was a culture where acceptance and approval got really twisted. And so I started to realize that I would be accepted if people approved of my behavior. And if people didn't approve of my behavior, I wouldn't be accepted. And that can mess with you as a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid. And so I started working really hard on doing everything right. And I remember when we first moved up there, I was really trying to follow the Lord. I was really trying to make good decisions. But I felt like every time I was in a place where I thought I was okay, someone would rip the rug out from underneath me and find something in my life that wasn't okay, and then blow it up and make it this huge big deal. So normal coming of age decisions and different things that would be normal to struggle with in that environment were not normal. There were a lot of rules. We couldn't go to the theater. We couldn't drink any kind of alcohol, which as a 16-year-old, okay, that makes sense. But my dad never danced with me at my wedding. There were a lot of really strict rules, and so it was a very confining environment. And I actually came out of the environment somewhat okay. A lot of my friends that I grew up with came out and train wrecked their lives, and I can't blame them. They ran as fast and far away from Jesus as they possibly could because they didn't feel like that Jesus accepted them for who they were. And so they couldn't connect with that Jesus. And I know, and you know, that that's not the Jesus of the Bible, but that was the Jesus that we were taught. And so I graduated from high school. I went to college, a Baptist Bible college, so I didn't stray too far from my roots. And again, same thing. The more I did the right things, the better my grades were, the more I was noticed. At this point, I had been in several weddings. I had several babies named after me. This is how good I was. I kid you not. I think I have 2 or 3 babies named after me. I'm not in contact with any of them, but I'm sure they're awesome. And so, anyways, and so I go to college, and I start to realize while I'm in college, like I'm starting to realize I'm on edge. I'm starting to realize I can't be at peace. I'm starting to get kind of jittery. And I'm just starting to realize things aren't really okay. And so I made her mad and she's leaving. Bye, Miss Mom. And so but I didn't know what was happening. And so I graduated from college, and I moved down here, and that's when I started teaching. And everything was going fairly well until I met my husband. He's here with me today. This is a random guy right there. And so we met in March. We were engaged by December and married by May in 2010. And we got married, and about a month later, the wheels fell off. And it was kind of a terrible time for the wheels to fall off because we got married, and he had just started a church with his dad and was being named lead pastor basically that July. We had like 35 people at the time. And so teeny little place, and I'll tell you more about the church in a little bit, but 35 people at a time, and I remember just sitting in the offices at church and just crying, like constantly. And I shouldn't be crying. I'm newly married, we're about ready to take over this church, like this should be a really fun time in my life. And I couldn't figure out why I was sad. And Brian would come in and like, "Lily, why are you crying?" And I don't know, I'm just sad. I can't explain this. I don't understand. And so we ignored it because that's what you do, and thought it would go away. And the sadness started turning into anger. And then the anger started turning into these episodes that I would have where I'd be fine for about 2 or 3 days, and then I would hit a wall, and I would just become completely irrational. I'd get angry, I'd scream, I'd yell, I'd hit myself, I'd hit my husband. There would be times where I'd be going so crazy physically, you'd have to pin me down to try to get me to calm down. I would be up until midnight, screaming, crying, yelling. I would randomly pick up my phone and call my parents and scream and yell at them. Bryant, in his defense, would just sometimes need to catch a breath of fresh air, so he'd jump in his car and try to go for a ride, because that's what guys do. And me, the psychotic Wonder Woman I was, would jump in my car and then follow him through Valrico. I'm not kidding. We can laugh at this. This is funny and very psycho. And so one time he ended up at his parents' house, and his parents, godly people, where his dad was the pastor of the church, and then basically he and Brian got together, flipped the church. We went from a Baptist church to non-denominational, reached people no one else was reaching. That's another story. But anyways, great people. He got there, I come in like about a minute behind pulling. He walks in the house, and I sling the door up and walk in. Where the bleep, bleepity bleep, bleep are you? I mean, I'm dropping every F-bomb, every word you can think of. And I just see his parents like deer in the headlights, what are we going to do? And so this was our life. And so we got to the point where we were like, okay, what are we going to do? We can't live like this. And so someone had given me CDs that Kevin had done at Heritage. He had taught a series, a 6-week series at Heritage. And so someone had given me these CDs just out of desperation, like, here, try, listen to these, see if this helps you. And you have to understand, this was 10 years ago. And at this point, mental health in the church has come a long way. It's not come nearly far enough, but it's come a long way in 10 years. And so 10 years ago, I don't even think mental health was on our radar. This isn't a mental illness, this is a sin issue. Does this sound familiar? There's something wrong with me. I've done something wrong. In fact, really well-meaning people would ask me, like, did you have premarital sex? Like, are you drunk? Did you... Like, these are the questions people were asking me to try to figure out why I'd gone off the rails. We can laugh at this too. I'm seeing some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so, mental health wasn't even on our radar. So we got these CDs and I started listening to them and I'm like, how does he know me? Like, everything he's saying, he was talking about abandonment, he was talking about relational issues, he was talking about acceptance and approval, he was talking about all of these things. And I was like, this is me. And so it got to the point where things were so bad, I didn't know what else to do. And I was like, I'm just calling Kevin. I know it's weird to go to a counselor and everyone's going to think I'm like wackadoodle-doo, but I don't know what else to do. I'm calling him. And so I had set up an appointment with Dr. Hull, and we started going together. I was in twice a week. I was in first part of the week by myself, and then the second part of the week with Bryant. And we started making some progress, but things were still pretty bad. And so I was now at this point suicidal, and so I would get steak knives and sit on the ground and just point them at my legs just to feel the blade, but not enough to actually go through with anything, but really contemplating it. And this is when Bryant kind of freaked out. And so we went to a 2-day intensive in Georgia, and I say we were going, really just Bryant was, because the whole way up I was trying to throw myself out of the car. So that was a fun thing for him. So I want to stop here for a second though, just so we can get a little bit of a breath of fresh air. It's uncomfortable to talk about this stuff, isn't it? That's why I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a chance to laugh and give you permission that it was okay. We can see this for the craziness that it is, because no one's talking about mental health. It's so stigmatized, and I think too, it's such a gray, messy area. We want to contextualize everything we talk about, and we can't with mental illness. And so that's why I wanted to come this morning, and I'm so thankful that Jen allowed me to, and LCS is really trying to flip the script on mental health, because it's so important for us to open up these conversations and have these conversations. And I do want to give you as much context for mental health and mental illness as I can, because what we have to understand is back in Genesis 3 when the fall happened, everything broke, right? And it's really easy for us to say, okay, yeah, absolutely, things broke spiritually. We know that. That's why Jesus Christ came to die on the cross for our sins, because we're broken spiritually. It's really easy for us to admit that things broke physically. That's why there's cancer. My mother-in-law passed away from Alzheimer's 2 years ago. That's why there's coronavirus. That's why there are physical limitations and deformities. But it gets really tricky and hard for us to understand and accept that things broke emotionally and mentally as well. We are mentally and emotionally broken. And what does that mean? That means that before Adam and Eve took the bite of the fruit, they were finding their love, their acceptance, their worth, and their security from God himself. They were whole individuals. They were okay. They were healthy. But as soon as they took a bite of that fruit, they felt shame, and they started to realize that they were looking for their love, acceptance, worth, and security from everyone but from God himself. And so then this created unmet needs, unresolved issues, and unhealed hurts. And we've been running in this way this entire time since. And so I think a lot of you came here this morning because you wanted to find some help for your children, and I think that's incredible, or you just wanted to learn more yourself. But I want to flip the script on you a little bit, and I want to tell you that mental health and getting healthy as a family starts with us first. And so I want to take a minute here and just kind of challenge you and kind of get you to go back a little bit. You're like, wait a minute, I didn't come here for therapy. And I'm sorry, you didn't. But I'm going to give you just a little bit of it. Because I want to ask you, where have you been looking for your love, acceptance, worth, and security in all the wrong places? Yes, mental health can be biological, which means we can be born with it. It can be genetic. But more often than not, it's environmental and generational, which means it's been passed down from generation to generation. And as I started to get healthy, I can look back and I can see, okay, this was no fault of my parents. They had no context for any of this, but I can see how anxiety and depression and abandonment, all of these things has kind of followed through and landed in my lap. And so then I had a choice of, okay, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to just keep ignoring it, or am I going to get down and dirty and start dealing with it? And so I had to start asking myself, where have I been looking for my love, acceptance, worth, and security from everyone else instead of from Jesus Christ? And then I had to go back and figure out, okay, what were those unhealed hurts, unresolved issues, and unmet needs that I had in my life that I was starting to self-medicate and try to cope with? One of my most favorite movies, and it is rated R, so I will give you a little bit of a story, but it's Silver Linings Playbook. It's with Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence. I love those two. And it's really a story about both of their mental health issues. And one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Bradley Cooper's meeting with his therapist, and he's just receiving his diagnosis of being bipolar. And he talks about his relief. And one of the lines he uses is, he was like, I've just been white-knuckling my life for so long. And when I heard that line, I fell apart, because it was like, that was my life for about 25 years. I had been white-knuckling it. I knew something wasn't right. I couldn't figure out what it was. I didn't know how to fix it. But I had been white-knuckling my life for so long. And when I started getting some diagnoses, when I started doing the hard work of healing, I felt like I could kind of loosen that grip for the first time in my life. And so I want to ask you this morning, what are you white-knuckling? What have you been just trying to cope and self-medicate yourself through? And I wanted to read some examples because I wrote some of these down. Maybe your dad left or your mom left. Maybe there was a death in the family, or you were raped, abused. Maybe it was a breakup, a failed marriage, a major financial setback. Maybe it was a failure, you got fired, you couldn't measure up, you couldn't provide, you struggled in school, you were betrayed, you were rejected, you were ignored, you were silenced, or you were spoiled. Some of you are going to have to go back a ways to kind of figure out what that unmet need, unresolved issue, and unhealed hurt was. And then some of you are sitting here and you know exactly what it was. And you know exactly how you've been looking for love, acceptance, worth, and security to try to meet those needs. But here's the thing is, some of us have been living with our brokenness so long, like I have been doing, we don't even recognize how we're self-medicating. We don't even recognize how we're coping. But it comes out in weird ways, right? So this is why you get so angry with your spouse over stupid things, or why you push your kids so hard. Maybe this is why you're a perfectionist. Maybe this is why you've had multiple marriages, or you have no friends, or you jump from friend to friend to friend, or from job to job to job. Maybe this is why those weird things that you can't explain that you do, it's like, oh, that's why I do it. Because I'm trying to meet these needs, or take care of these hurts, or resolve these issues that I have absolutely no control over. And then this leads down into our children. Jen had mentioned it, I have a podcast called Scar Stories, and so just recently I interviewed a mom. Her name is Dina Yoy. And have you heard, and you can nod or woo or whatever, but have you heard of the organization To Write Love on Her Arms? It's based out of Orlando. Okay, it's a mental health organization. It's a really neat organization started by Jamie Twarkowski. There's a movie, Sony put it out. It's called To Write Love on Her Arms, and it's on Netflix. I believe you can watch it. It might be on Amazon. Can't remember. Look both places. Anyways. But Dina's daughter, Renee, is the reason why that entire organization got started. And so I interviewed her for my podcast. It's up. But she said her daughter was an addict, self-harmed, mental illness, the whole 9 yards, and is actually walking in health today, which is incredible. But she said, you know, when we were in the worst of it, in and out of rehab facilities and stuff, she said, I sat down with Renee and I said, okay, Renee, what can I do to help you? As a parent, what can I do to help you? And she said she had a pen and a piece of paper because she was ready to write down all of this stuff that Renee was going to say. And Renee just looked at her and Renee said, Mom, I need you to get healthy. I need you to be thriving. I need you to be okay. Because if I know you're okay, then I can focus on me and I can be okay. And I thought, that is so powerful. Our kids are so intuitive. I have an 8-year-old. She's my daughter. She's my oldest. I have 4 kids, and my 8-year-old's my oldest. And I talk very openly with her about my anxiety, my depression, and my borderline personality disorder, because she sees when mommy's struggling. She sees when mommy's hurting. She knows mommy takes medicine for this. And so I talk openly about, like, mommy has a sickness that mommy is learning to work with and work through, and mommy sees Dr. Kevin to help her, because otherwise what happens is our kids begin to blame themselves. They begin to blame themselves for what they can't understand and explain. And so I try to be very open with my children that this is something mommy has to struggle with, and mommy is struggling with. And I'll never forget one time she said to me, "Mommy, am I going to have anxiety?" And I said, "Baby, I hope not. And I don't think you will. That's why mommy's working so hard. But if you do, we know how to get help. And we know what we can do to make sure that you are okay." And so I just want to challenge you to begin to think through, okay, what are these unhealed hurts, unresolved issues, and unmet needs? And as you begin to get healthy yourself, you can start to maybe get an idea or a clue into, okay, what could this be in my kids' lives? Where are some ways that maybe they've had unmet needs, unresolved issues, or unhealed hurts that I haven't necessarily taken time to really help them process through? And I haven't been teaching them how to find their love and acceptance and worth and security in Jesus Christ. Social media right now, my husband's doing a message. It's called it's a message series right now on Sundays. It's called "To Hell with Normal." And right now, they've helped me out with this. I'm putting you on the spot. But the average teenagers' anxiety levels are what would have put people in the psych ward in the 50s, correct? Yeah, and it's mainly due to social media. Your kids are getting onslaughted by images and everybody's highlight reels and what they need to do to keep up. And it's a constant thing. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, it's all over. And so they are experiencing pressures that most of us never had to experience. And so we have got to be teaching them how to find their love and acceptance and worth and security in Jesus Christ. And so I stopped my story when I said we were on our way up to Georgia to get some help, and I was throwing myself out of the car. And so we got up there, and we had to take like a personality quiz and some different things just so they knew kind of what they were going to be working with. And we got up there, and I'll never forget, Phil leaned over and he was like, "Nicole, we're going to start with you because your hair's on fire." I was like, "It surely is." And he was like, "You took this little quiz, and I want you to tell me how angry you think you are. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, how angry do you think you are?" And I was like, I mean, I know I'm angry, so I'll aim high. Like, I'm probably like a 5 or a 6. And he just started laughing at me, and he looked at me, and he was like, "I have never had anyone score as high as you have scored on the anger." He was like, "You are a 10 out of 10. If you could be an 11 out of 10, you'd be an 11 out of 10. And so we started to kind of do a deep dive into my life, and I had just realized that the legalism and the fundamentalism and the fact that I had gotten acceptance and approval so confused had just messed me up royally. And we spent about 2 days just kind of going back and looking at how all these things had created in me a view of God that was not reality. And I had to relearn the gospel in a sense. I had to relearn that Jesus Christ didn't expect anything out of me. In fact, the whole reason why he died on the cross and rose again was to give me his life, so that when God looked at me, he didn't see Nicole. He saw Jesus Christ. That was it. And so I didn't have to keep trying to be someone or something or prove myself to him. He accepted me for who I was, the mess that I was and all. And I'm telling you, something started going off in my brain that was like, this is what I've been missing my whole life. Like, I could have told you the gospel forwards and backwards, but I could not have told you that Jesus Christ accepted me for who I was. And then when God looked at me, he only saw Jesus. I couldn't tell you that. I didn't know that. And so then we had to work through about a day of just forgiveness. I had to sit people in a chair, like figuratively, but they literally put a chair in front of me. And I had to make a list of everyone I needed to forgive and exactly what I needed to forgive. And I just place them in the chair and walk through and say, "So-and-so, I forgive you for boop-a-boop-a-boop." And then at the end, we shredded up that list, and I thought I was healed. I thought I was good. And we got home, and I was good for about a week, I would say, and the episodes started coming back. And I was like, what the heck? I am doing everything I can do. And so I started seeing Kevin again, and I would say about 3 or 4 months later is when he finally said, "Nicole, I don't like labels, but I need you to read something for me. Does this sound like you?" And he handed me the diagnostic for borderline personality disorder. And I read it and started sobbing. And he was like, "Why are you crying?" And I was like, "Because this is me. Now I know something's not wrong with me. Something's happening to me that we can fix together." And I was so relieved. And one of the things that I want to say is, I know sometimes when it comes to mental health and mental illness that we get nervous with personality disorders. We get nervous with medication. We get nervous with diagnoses. But again, you have to remember, we're as broken up here and in our hearts as we are physically. And so we need to see people who know the brain, who know the emotions, who know what is going on, so they can help us figure out how we rewire our brains as a self-mechanism, self-protection, self-medicated way to keep ourselves safe in unsafe environments, and then how can we rewire them healthily. See, that's all personality disorders are. That's all anxiety and depression is. It's you're in an environment where you don't feel safe. You're in a place where you don't feel like you're enough, and your body is reacting physically to that. It's fight or flight. Anxiety is the fight part of an adrenaline rush. In other words, you're in a situation where you're scared, and so your heart's beating faster, you're having panic attacks, your palms are getting sweaty, and you're reacting, you're fighting out of that situation. And depression is the flight side of an adrenaline rush. You're in a situation where you feel overwhelmed, you can't rise up against it, and so that's why you curl up in a ball in a dark room and you sleep. And so personality disorders are along the same thing. It's you're in a situation where you don't feel like your personality is okay, your personality can't keep you safe, so you develop different ways of interacting with certain situations, and because you've done it for so long, now it's a part of your personality. But it's a disorder because it's probably not the best way to react in those situations. And so a big part of borderline is abandonment. I had a huge fear of abandonment, which would make sense, right? If I didn't do what you wanted me to do, you would leave me. And so I had to learn when I was in situations how not to just get up and leave before someone could leave me. And so these diagnoses were so helpful for me. But then I was saddled with, okay, what am I going to do with these then? I'm a new pastor's wife. I'm young. I've had no context for this. This is not how I saw my life going. I really had to struggle through even my relationship with the Lord for a while. So if you're in that place, or your child's in that place where they've just received a lot of diagnoses and they're struggling in their relationship with the Lord, this is so normal. I had to relearn who He was and how He interacted with me and how I had to interact with Him. I had to relearn all of these things. And I just remember thinking, is this going to be for the rest of my life? And we went to Texas for my brother's wedding, and while we were out there, we went to Matt Chandler's church. He's an incredible pastor out in Texas. We went to his church, and he was preaching out of 2 Corinthians 12, Paul's thorn in the flesh. And I will never forget his description of what Paul's thorn in the flesh was, changed my life. He said he wasn't so sure that it was something physical. You know how a lot of times you hear it was something with his eyes, or like a stutter, because Paul talked about having trouble speaking. He said he thought it was emotional or mental. And that Paul asked God to remove it 3 different times. God did not. And then Paul began to see it as a gift. And that changed my life. I thought, oh my gosh, Paul, like the great Paul, potentially had a mental or emotional disorder. And when you look at Scripture, I feel like it really clearly points out that he did. In Philippians 3:13-14, he says, one thing I do, forgetting, that's present tense. He's forgetting what is behind and straining is present tense, towards what is ahead. And you've got to think about Paul, right? I mean, what was Paul doing before he was basically the father of the church? He was killing people. He was going into homes and ripping families apart. He was throwing mothers and fathers in prison. He was making kids orphans. That's what he was doing. And you have to realize he was only in hiding for about 15 years after he accepted Christ as his Savior. He was in hiding for about 15 years, and then he came out and started his ministry. So I bet there were kids who were 3 when their daddy died that now he's meeting as 18-year-olds. I mean, he's rubbing shoulders with people who he tore their families apart. And he's constantly being reminded of what he did and how he persecuted the church that he now loves. And he's coming face to face with people who've had to forgive him, and he has to hear their stories now. So it makes a ton of sense to me that this could be a thorn in his flesh, anxiety, depression. And it makes a ton of sense to me when he says he has to forget what's behind and strain towards what's ahead. And then, I'm sure you've heard these verses before, but you can see the progression of kind of the way he views himself in Scripture. In 1 Corinthians 15:9, he says he's the least of the apostles. Then in Ephesians 3:8, it says he's the least of the saints. And then in 1 Timothy 1:15, do you remember, what does he say? He says he's basically the worst sinner. And so I think Paul did struggle with anxiety and depression, and I'm sure he did ask God to remove it from him because it can really track you down. But God said no, and so I'll never forget, I was sitting in that spot, and again, I just had an emotional release to this because I thought, God, you're not going to heal me, are you? You're not going to take this away because you want to use me instead. You want me to be able to speak to people and to tell people, listen, you can have all the mental illnesses in the world, and you can be fighting the biggest uphill battle of your life, and you can still be okay because of the gospel. And I think for me, that was life-changing. And I just at that moment decided, okay, I'm going to accept this. This is a gift. Like, it's going to suck. There's going to be seasons in my life that are going to be really difficult. But I want to do the hard work of not getting healed, because this side of heaven, I don't think I'm going to get healed. And I cannot stand when we in Christian circles promise people healing when that's not what God has promised this side of heaven. I think we can be healthy. I think we can walk in health. I don't think we have any business promising someone God's going to heal this or take this out of your life. That messes people up. And I have friends out the yin yang who would tell you how that has messed them up. But we can live healthy, and God can use us, and He wants to use us. And when we're in the middle of our mess, when we're struggling, it reminds us we have no worth outside of Jesus Christ, and it pushes us to the gospel of what He did for us on the cross. And so I said, you know what, God, I'm in. Let's do this. I want to see this as a gift. And so I want to challenge some of you who maybe are struggling emotionally or mentally, or maybe your children are struggling emotionally or mentally, to encourage them, this can be a gift. People with mental illness are some of the most real, vulnerable people. They are smart, they are intelligent, they are capable. I think so often in the news, a lot of times the only time we hear about mental illness are when people are shooting people or doing wild and crazy things, and it's just not true. They are capable people who can do incredible things. And so we've got to start flipping the script on what mental health is. My brother, and Jen knows about this, and those of you who maybe follow me on Instagram may, but my brother committed suicide January 4th of 2019. His and my stories are very, very different. And I bring him up because there's two different approaches to pain. You can face your pain, or you can numb your pain. And my brother decided to numb his pain. He was 31 years old. He has two twins. They're now, they turned 4 in March. He was a children's pastor. He was in and out of churches for a while, which I think that's when I started realizing something was amiss. He couldn't hold a job for more than about a year. And so he would hop around from churches. And he'd gotten shingles about 7 or 8, well now, I need to add on 2 years. So I'd say about 8 to 10 years ago, he'd gotten shingles. And then it relapsed. And so he had been in a lot of pain, and the doctors had written him prescriptions for opioids, because that's, I guess, I've never had shingles, but I think that's kind of the line of defense of dealing with shingles. And so he got addicted to opioids. He has a very addictive personality. One of the things he'd done in high school and college, which hindsight's 2020. I don't know why we didn't catch this. I don't. Now, you kick yourself. Look back like, oh, he was drinking half a bottle of NyQuil to go to sleep at night. Why did we not realize that? I don't know. I don't know why we didn't realize that. We didn't. And so he has a very addictive personality. And so about 3 years before he committed suicide, he had gotten caught stealing pain meds out of someone's medicine cabinet when they had invited him over for dinner. And so, and then shortly after that, it had come out that he had been taking medication from he had dogs, and one of the dogs had gotten hit by a car, and so they had written pain medication for the dog, but he was taking the dog's painkillers. And so he went to 3 different vets to get these painkillers, and it caught up with him. And so there was a warrant out for his arrest. He spent a day in jail, and then he had to go to rehab for 21 days. And all during this time, he started having seizures, and we found out he had colon cancer. I think now, not colon, kidney cancer. I said colon cancer last time. Someone was like, it's kidney cancer, because he got his kidney removed, because you have 2. Anyways, so I had to rethink through all this. So he got kidney cancer, and so I remember when he was in rehab, he was the clearest he had been in a very, very long time. And I called him daily, and I was one of the only people that he talked to regularly during that time. And some of the stuff that he started telling me and sharing with me, I was like, bud, you have got to as soon as you get out of here, because I was like, I think you need to be in here longer. Rehab's incredibly expensive. And they just didn't want to find a way to pay for it, I guess, which is fine. But he got out in 21 days, and I was like, we've got to get you into some kind of counseling, because you're dealing with so much. You've got to be able to face it. And he just didn't want to. He had his kidney removed, and I was upset about this, but they put him on all sorts of morphine, which then triggered all the other, and so it just around and around we went. And we had a conversation, I remember the summer before he died, and he just was very honest with me about where his life was. And I just remember saying, like, we can beat this. You just have to face your pain. Like, you have to face the fact that you're angry. You have to face the fact that things happen to you that shouldn't have happened to you. You have to deal with it. You can't keep blaming other people and hoping they're going to ask forgiveness, because some of these people are never going to ask forgiveness. And you've got to settle that in your own heart. And he was like, Cole, I know, I'm just not ready. And so he called me back that fall, and he was not himself. I think he was high, and I just didn't have a lot of time for it. I was frustrated with him, just being honest with you. And so I rushed through the conversation, and that was our last conversation, because in that January he took his life. And I want to tell you that your story, your kid's story, does not need to end the way my brother's story ended, but I do think it's worth us talking about and just realizing that suicide is becoming an epidemic in a lot of Christian circles, because we're asking people to shoulder things they were never meant to shoulder, and we're asking them to stuff and to hide and to not be vulnerable, because we don't want to be weirded out by their weirdness, and we're afraid of the mess. And so we're asking people to carry inside of them things they were never meant to carry, and they can't do it anymore, and they're getting tired. And so we have to be willing to talk about suicide. And I did some study after my brother committed suicide, and it's not the unforgivable sin. The unforgivable sin is when you deny Jesus Christ as your Savior. My brother is in heaven. I did have to work through the shock of losing him, the anger and the blame shifting. There's a lot of blame shifting in families that happen when someone commits suicide. That's normal. You do need to go to counseling to work through that, because that will divide and sever a family faster than anything you can imagine. There is a lack of closure even to this day. I will oftentimes blame myself and wonder what I could have done more, and I have to verbalize that with my husband and with Kevin. And there have been times where Kevin has said, what would you say if you could go back? And I write that out, or I verbalize that, and that helps me with the closure. I have to remind myself that he was not the victim. Those he left behind are the victims. We didn't ask for this. He chose it. And yeah, it was the most important decision of his life, and he didn't confer with any of us about it, and that sucks. And so there's a lot of processing that happens when someone you know commits suicide. And so if you've walked through that or are walking through that, I think the best thing you can do as a family or as an individual is to get into counseling to help someone walk through the process with you, because it can destroy you just as quickly if you're left behind. And so I really, really had to work through those things. But as I look at it, I'm like, gosh, this is such an incredible example of two different approaches to life: facing pain or numbing pain. Being willing to do the hard work and to get down and gritty and say, I don't care what I look like, what people think, I'm going to work my butt off to get healthy, or you're just going to get overcome with the emotion and the anger. And so as I look out at you guys, I just think to myself, what an incredible legacy we could be if we chose to say, enough with the generational baggage, enough with the hurt people hurting people, enough with the unhealth. Like, we are going to be the first ones to say, okay, I'm going to start getting healthy myself so that I can begin to make sure my family is healthy, so I can make sure my marriage is healthy, so I can make sure my relationships are healthy. And we can start to turn the tide in our own lives, in our families, and then that becomes a domino effect then that happens in our churches and in our schools, and we can begin to turn some of this around, but it starts with us. And I think the two things that I always tell people when we're dealing with the 3 C's, the 3 C's that I say are your next steps when you're dealing with mental health or mental illness is, first of all, find a good church. You need a church that's willing to talk about mental health and mental illness. Our church has been known as the Mental Health Church. 2 years ago, I shared my story from start to finish, basically exactly what I just told you, minus my brother's suicide. because it hadn't happened yet, in our church. And then after he committed suicide, a few months later, we did a whole message on suicide. We talk about it all the time at our church. So you need to find a good church. The second C is you need to find good community. So within a church, you need to find a good set of friends who will have your back no matter what. I have 2 or 3 friends that when I'm in a really, really bad place, I will text them and say, don't panic, I'm okay, but I'm really struggling. And then they'll just text back, have you talked to Kevin? And that's all I need. And so then the last C is counseling. Getting counseling. These people, you in Lakeland, I'm so jealous. We, at our church, we send everybody over to Holland Associates, everybody. They make, and I'm telling you, we have a ton of people, they make the 30-minute drive all the way over here to see Kevin or Maya or Lydia. I mean, Holland Associates is the bee's knees over here with counseling. They're the only people I know, so don't be offended if you see someone else. I'm sure there's other great counselors over here. But they are incredible. They're faith-based. But they also know about your brain, your emotions. They know they have resources. And so you've got to get into counseling with someone who isn't going to slap scripture on your problem, because you need more than that. You need someone who can figure out how you're wired, how you rewired yourself, and then how to rewire yourself back to a healthy state. And so those are the 3 C's I would say, is church, community, and counseling. All right. So that is what I have for you this morning. I do want to open it up for some questions. I don't know if you guys wrote some stuff down on your index cards and we can grab those, or if you want to ask a question out loud. I know I just kind of went full steam train and then slammed the brakes. So, yes ma'am.
I'll jump out first.
Okay, do it.
My daughter has struggled with anxiety, generalized anxiety and depression for 7 years. She's 16 years old. Thank you for the reference of Holland Associates.
Yes, ma'am.
Because our counselor moved to Wesley Chapel.
Okay.
Last Drive.
Yeah.
She's been on medication for 6 years. The struggle is being the parent of, because she's so brilliant, she's so talented, and if you meet her, you would not even know she has anxiety and depression. So she hides it because she doesn't know how to, it would be weird to everybody else to really understand what her problems are, but I'm trying to get her to understand that a lot of people struggle with it. So my question for you really is, as a parent, like I try to push her, like step out, you can do this, you can do this. I get frustrated because her anxiety can cripple her and prevent her from being who I know she can be.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to push, but I think I push too hard.
Yeah.
Because I know her potential. So as like your parents, if you could give advice to me, like what should be a prayer? Like settle down, like God's working, right? But I want my own path, right? I mean, I see all the great potential that this anxiety, her specifically panic attacks, that I have to go check her out of school, or she can't go to this, or she can't go to this because she's filled with panic. So me, I'm sitting there trying to say, you can do this, you can do this, you're, all the great things you do, don't let this crush you. But I think I'm defeating her because I'm trying to push in a way that maybe, she just needs to settle. And so as a parent, how can I feel good about, like, what I feel like she's missing so much because of this mental illness? How can I guess listening to you is encouraging, but maybe even, I don't know, like what advice would you give me speaking to your own mom?
I think first of all, give yourself grace. Like this is all new for you. This is, as a mom, we want to fix things, and so you see your daughter hurting and it's killing you. And so you need to realize that like this angst that you're having is coming from a really good place. So you need to give yourself grace to realize that you want what's best for her. That's what you're fighting for. And I also applaud you for being like, okay, maybe my approach isn't the best, so what can I do? I usually tell parents, because you're not alone, there's so many parents are like, and I bet there's parents in here that are feeling the same way. You were brave enough to ask first, so I thank you for that. But I think, I tell parents a lot of times, if your child is like 13, 14 and older, they are old enough to have a real conversation. And so I think the first thing you do is to sit her down and just tell her what you just told me. I'm afraid I may be pushing you too hard because I know your potential, but I also realize like you're struggling right now, like, and this is real for you. So I don't want to be pushing you. I want to accept you with where you're at. This is where we're at. You have panic attacks, and sometimes I have to get you out of school. This is where we're at. You have panic attacks, so you can't do everything that you want to do. Okay, so like I'm going to create that safe place for you, and there will be times where as a mom, I'm going to try to push you because I think it might be good for you, but I'm also going to let off a little bit, and we're going to try to work through this together so that we can get to the point where you can enter back into these things. So I think maybe slowing off on the accelerator just a little bit, entering into the anxiety with her, just saying like, this is real for you, I understand that. I don't want to compound it by trying to push it. It's not coming from a place where I don't think you're enough. It comes from a place of like, I know you can do this, but maybe it's just not right now in this season. And I think just having that conversation with her so that she doesn't, because what may be happening is, yeah, she may be getting frustrated, thinking like, I can't, she's already up against this anxiety, and then she's like, now my mom thinks, you know, there's these expectations, and I can't do those either. And so I think reframing that for her and having her understand, you don't have expectations over her. You want what's best for her, and so how can you guys do that together? Does that help at all?
Totally.
Okay. Thanks for asking that question. That was good. Yes, ma'am.
Can you or are you perhaps coming to talk to our teenagers here?
I don't know. I would be willing to, but that's that would be an administration question.
Because you're not alone. I just want to say that.
And I taught 16 and 17-year-olds, and we would talk a lot about mental health in the classroom, and a lot of them would open up about it. They want to talk about it. They're frustrated. They feel very alone. And I think too, you know, how honest can we be? Can we be honest? Lakewood Christian School is known as the school in this area, right? A lot of high standards. I mean, it's a college prep curriculum here, like especially in high school. The kids are held to very, very high standards. And it's incredible. I mean, to have this school, this is an incredible blessing. And the education, I was on the inside, the education your kids are getting is phenomenal. And then to have the Bible classes and things like that is absolutely incredible. But they just coming to this school because of the rigorous like athletic programs and academics and stuff, they already feel that pressure. And now they're in rooms with other kids who are just as smart. I mean, there's some brilliant, talented kids here. And so they're feeling all of that. So as many questions as you can have, hey, where are you not feeling like you're enough? Where are you feeling like mom and dad are maybe pushing you too hard? How with your friends and your other classmates, like where are you feeling like you don't measure up? And letting them have a chance to talk. And at first, if you've never had these conversations before, they're going to shut down and like kind of, you know, shrug you off. But the more you normalize, I taught English and you would never know it, but the more you normalize these conversations and the more free they feel to talk about it, they will. And I think as I have an 8-year-old, she's my oldest, and a 6'4" and a 1-year-old, so I'm not where you're at. And I don't want to tell you what to do because I think you are probably doing the best you can, and I'm so proud of you for that. But I think like just giving your kids chances to talk and being okay to let them struggle. Let them struggle. That is the best thing you can do for their character. Let them struggle. You provide the safety net around them, but don't do the hard work for them. They've got to do it themselves. And you be the person coming up alongside of them, being their biggest fan. But that's why it's important if you can find a counselor, that the counselor can tell the hard stuff so that you can kind of be the fan on the sidelines. That's a brilliant team right there. Are there index cards too that we should try to collect? I don't know. Do you have any other questions? Okay. Well, I'll be around after for a little while if you guys want to talk. I'm just going to close this in prayer, pray over us, your kids, and Jen already did our country because, there's a little thing called the inauguration going on today. Some of you are like, that is the source of my anxiety today. We're going to be fine, I promise you. God is still in control. He's not surprised. There's been worse people like Nero in charge of things before, so we're okay. Let me pray for you guys. So Jesus, thank you so much for just this time that we can have together. Lord, I want to thank you for these brave sisters in Christ sitting in front of me, God, who some of them are fighting battles every single day themselves, and then some of them are fighting battles for their children and their marriages. And so, God, I just pray that you would just continue to do, as Scripture says, you're going to continue to do the work that you've started in our lives. And God, we're so thankful that you sent your Son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for our sins, that, as Romans says, when we were nothing, when we were in the midst of our messes, you died on the cross for us so that we could understand your incredible love for us. And now when you look at us, you don't see us and our messes and our failures, you see Jesus Christ. And God, that's what you see over our children. And so, Lord, I pray that we'd be brave enough and vulnerable enough to start having conversations with our children about mental health. Maybe start asking them, okay, where are you feeling forgotten? Where are you feeling ignored? Where are you feeling unseen? It's hard for us to hear that as parents, God. It's hard for us because we start to think that it's our fault. But God, our kids are just as broken and live in a broken world. And so, Lord, help us to be brave enough and courageous enough to begin to ask them the questions, to be able to find them the help that they need, and God, to begin to lead by example and to get healthy ourselves. Jesus, we love you so much. I just pray that you would keep our country safe, that those of us who follow you would be confident in knowing that you are still in control, you are still God, you are still sovereign, and that this world is not our home, and that your kingdom is not here yet. It's coming, but it's not here. And so, God, I just pray that we'd have just a confident swagger about us, knowing that we are daughters of the King of the universe. We love you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.